Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a racist entitled Karen called the police on my young daughter for supposedly using gang signs at a park. She ends up assaulting me, not realizing that my daughter is mute. Here is what happened. And the title story starts like this. The woman that lives 2 doors down from me is a Karen that seems to think my family is the perfect target for her nasty behavior. She is the type of person that thinks money is everything in the world and nothing else determines what makes a good person. This is my guess of why she is divorced, but I won't get into that right now. She is upper middle class, but acts like that means she is wealthy and some kind of celebrity. And by the way guys, obviously money is very important for Karens because they are already morally bankrupt. Keep that in mind. Anyway, on many occasions she has come up to us and told my husband and I that we don't belong in a neighborhood like this, that we are poor working class people and should go live in a slum like all the other poor people. She has tried on many different occasions to create problems for my family in hopes that we will just get fed up and move. All of them have been childish and brushed aside by us, none of them have come close to making us consider moving. She also hates us because we are Mexican and not white like a good percentage of the neighborhood. Only Karen seems to give a flying F about it though. The only thing that she does that bothers me is that she likes to tell her kids very loudly not to play with my daughter because she is supposedly not normal. Loud enough for my daughter to hear it. This was probably the main reason I went from finding Karen to be a slight annoyance to hating her. When you involve children, I find that to be fighting below the belt and way out of line. My daughter is 8 years old and mute. She had cancer in her throat as a toddler. Because of surgery, she cannot really talk. We use sign language and even though she can hear, we tend to sign as well. She doesn't get treated any differently at home, but she is hitting that age where kids at school notice when people are different. I know she is a little self-conscious about being mute and Karen loudly calling her not normal doesn't help anything. Still, she is a happy kid and one day on a weekend we decided to take her to the community park to have some fun. What we didn't notice was Karen was also at the park recording us. My daughter was signing with dad about wanting to go on the swings next and that was when Karen screamed so loudly that she got the attention of the entire park. Karen, that dirty Mexican girl is throwing up gang signs. Everybody protect your children, she is clearly a danger to this neighborhood. Don't worry, because as an HOA member, I'm gonna call the police and make this playground safe. People were watching and listening to her, but not for the reasons that she thought. They all figured she was insane, claiming that an 8-year-old at the park was trying to incite gang violence. I didn't want to walk away because I was sick and tired of Karen by this point. I was not gonna hang around for whatever ended up playing out. She called the police and I couldn't believe what she was telling them on the phone. For a summary, she had told them about a bunch of Mexicans hanging around the park throwing gang signs and trying to recruit kids. Also claiming that we were members of the cartel selling drugs and trying to kidnap other kids. From that kind of call, you can be sure that the police had shown up within just a few minutes and I'd never seen so many cops respond to a single call before in my life. Karen was fake crying and pointing my family out as being the dangerous ones and demanding that we be arrested. They were honestly confused because let me quickly paint the picture of what they were looking at. An 8-year-old girl, a 5-foot-tall mother, and a father wearing his Batman t-shirt and cargo shorts. Our family looked like a bunch of nerds and the least threatening people in the park. Still, Karen insisted we were part of the cartel and dangerous, so the police came over to talk to us. Officer, we got a complaint that you are throwing around gang signs and selling drugs to children. Can you just help us clear this whole thing up? First of all, do you have any drugs or weapons on you? Husband, no, we have nothing on us. Our daughter is mute, so these gang signs are just sign language. I know Karen has a recording of it. You can look it over and see that we didn't use any gang signs. We don't even know any. We just came to play in the park. One of the 30 officers on the scene did know sign language and looked at the video to confirm that we were indeed just talking about going on the swings. They tell Karen and she doesn't like the fact that we seem to be getting away with just existing. She flat out demands that the police do their job and arrest all 3 of us for cartel activities. They explain that there is zero suspicion and they cannot just arrest us because Karen said so. She goes on a rant, an absolute tirade about how we don't belong in this country. Once again bringing up her HOA involvement and saying this is a nice white neighborhood and we are just ruining it by coming in here. demanding they check if we are legal citizens and saying that the HOA funds pay for this park, so she decides who gets to be in it. She is not stopping or slowing down. I don't even know how she is getting air to keep going. Keep in mind, not all the officers are white and don't like hearing what is coming out of her mouth either. To end her rant, she grabs a large stone and throws it right at my head. She gets me right in the eye, and while there is no damage, it is enough for the cops to have an excuse to do something. They get her to the ground and put her in handcuffs for assault and battery. She is again saying that she is part of the HOA and she cannot be arrested because of that. That this is a white country and they should be arresting the Mexicans for ruining it. I press charges against her for the assault and battery, and I know I will win it because I have all these cops as my witnesses. All in all, she ends up going to jail for her charges, but it wasn't because of the assault. She was also charged with calling the police for a fake emergency, since all of them had to show up and could have been out dealing with actual threats to safety. Still, she might have gotten away with a lighter sentence if only she could keep her mouth shut. One more racist rant that had to be cut off by the judge was the final straw for her to get thrown into jail. I don't know or care what happened to her after that. I was just glad my daughter no longer had a bully that was 4 times her age. And well, Ripe Stars, I'm curious, if you would have been in this situation and encountered this Karen trying to mess with your child, what would you have done if you were in OP's shoes? Let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, I would very much appreciate it if you could also like the video, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much. And the next one is another revenge story. So I used to work at a gas station. Me being only 20 at the time, I needed a job since I was new to my area after moving from one state to another, and the job was good. The manager, she was awesome. She was the sweetest thing before she left, and the manager after was just as awesome before I moved to a new apartment. However, the previous assistant manager when I started working there, let's call him Richard for obvious reasons. And let's call the first manager Angel, obviously not real name. Richard was known to be a very hostile, creepy a-hole when not around the manager, and made us try to do his load of the work and blamed us for being lazy when we couldn't do it and our jobs fast enough. My coworkers and I had brought the situation to the higher-ups numerous times, and as much as she wanted us to be heard, Angel couldn't do anything. And it came to a boiling point 2 months down the line on my end. A little fact about me, I am timid, I'm autistic, and I get very stressed when someone threatens me with my life. I get very sick to my core and lack of breathing if I have to deal with that, and I use that to my advantage. On the shift I was supposed to be working that day, I had asked my friend Cross, not real name, if I could borrow his speaker to listen to my music, and my manager said as long as I can do my job behind the register and Cross was okay with it, I can listen to my music, and I asked specifically if I can borrow it to take it home for a couple of days until my new speaker came in that I bought with the previous paycheck. Cross said okay, and shift change happened and Richard came in. He sees me listening to my music and he asks me to play his music from his phone on Cross's speaker. I said no, the speaker is mine for the next couple of days and I don't want to be held responsible for any damage. He then whispers under his breath for me to hear, but for the cameras in the store to not pick up, "I have a knife, you know." And I basically, in a single moment, and quickly too, came up with a way to end his BS. Now for my revenge. I yelled at him loud enough to him so the cameras can pick it up, knowing that he would have to say something to defend himself. "Why are you threatening me with a knife?" And I kinda had a mixture of fear if he actually had one, and determination to make this man suffer for me and my coworkers' verbal abuse and sexual harassment we endured for the past couple months. He backs away and said, Hey, chill, it was just a joke." And I knew I had to do something, because at that point I said, "A joke, huh? Here's a good joke. Have fun working alone. I quit." I walked out, called my mom, who I lived with nearby, and explained the situation in tears after the adrenaline and fear finished its end, and I then was told and called my manager to explain to her the situation. I then told her that I knew he had the knife on him because I saw a pocket knife in the office and it was a custom one with his name on it. Me and my mom, after she picked me up and took me back to the store to talk with my manager, I wound up in a situation with the manager, the branch manager, and the district manager asking about what happened, and I explained it again, calmer now in full, and they asked if I was okay. I told them, no, I have a guy who has been sexually harassing my other coworkers, verbally assaulting me and the others, and try and threaten an autistic person who did nothing except say no to using a speaker, get threatened with a knife. I don't feel safe with him around. They asked me about the speaker, I called Cross, and he confirmed I asked to borrow the speaker overnight and backed me up with what the assistant manager had done in the past, and at that point police were called. They checked the cameras and heard me yelling about the knife, and after a few months I come to learn he got fired from his last job and arrested for them finding out he was in jail for threatening physical harm to a disabled person, sexual harassment, sexual assault, and unauthorized concealed weapon. He wanted a speaker, he got a speaker, a few speakers on a podium who put his ass in jail about a week after. And yeah, Ripe stars, time and time again, I feel so bad for people in these situations having to endure such a toxic work environment. So therefore, I am very happy for OP that the story turned around and OP got revenge. Either way, the next one is a housemate revenge story. So there I was, newly arrived in the city of Portland. I was excited to start apartment hunting and was crashing with a friend of mine in the meantime. After some searching, I came upon a house with a rent amount of $500. Very neat, I will call the number and get interviewed. The girl I chatted with sounded really nice and we clicked on a lot of things. She said she hates drugs, has 2 dogs, is ultra clean, and just a whole host of other things I like in a person. I checked out the apartment and it was spotless. The dogs were super adorable, she seemed cool and clear-cut, man was I in for a good time. The day I moved in, everything changed. I unpacked everything, plugged in my computer, and asked if she had any Wi-Fi. I don't know what that is. I was a little shocked, but whatever, I explained it to her. She laughed, saying how the internet is for nerds and she personally never uses it. I saw the ad for the apartment online. Okay, that was a little weird, but whatever, I'll get an internet connection. I wake up and notice there is dog crap on the floor of the living room. I tell her and she gets pissed, starts yelling like crazy at the dogs and locks them up in their cages as punishment. They are constantly locked in her room for seriously like 20 hours at a time. It's ridiculous. She tends to beat them on occasion too, because she's gotta be a terrible human being in all regards, I guess. There was crap on the floor every single day. Anyways, none of my business. I love dogs, but those ain't my dogs and I'm not telling someone how to raise them. And by the way, Ripe stars, I'm not sure if I agree with this sentiment. If you see something like this, especially if it is your roommate, is there really nothing you can do? Isn't there like a hotline or an agency or something that takes care of dogs that are being treated badly like this? If there's really nothing you can do, it kind of seems like an oversight to me. But anyway, the final straw was when this supposedly drug-free woman invited her friends over to do tons of cocaine. When I asked her about it, she said, "No dude, cocaine is pretty much on the same level as alcohol and weed. Don't be such a nerd." Rent is due, so I ask her if she's paying with a check or something else. She says she currently doesn't have any money, but if I cover a couple of months of rent, she will pay me back. Every red flag on planet Earth was waving in my head. Hell no, I ain't about that life. Luckily, I hadn't signed anything when I moved in because I guess she didn't understand how that stuff works. So begins my plan of escape. I call the police and SPCA. I let the police know that she's having another druggy party on a particular day. I let the SPCA know of the absolute effing filth the dogs go through. I also let the police know about that. I called up my friend and let him know that I was crashing at his place again and I would give him $100 if he helped me transport my stuff. It was a perfect plan. She came into my room in the morning, wondering if I was planning on leaving. My heart was racing, but I was like, nah dude, this place is awesome. She left for work. To this day I still don't know what it was she did for a living, and this was the exact same day as the druggy party. I called my buddy and he helped me transport my stuff. I was out of there, I changed my phone number, deleted my email, and became pretty much invincible to her. A few months later, I called a private investigator and paid her $100 to find out everything she knew about my awful housemate. I was pretty worried about those doggos. I learned the following. She was arrested and charged for intent to distribute drugs. Apparently, she had a huge amount of drugs that I didn't know about alongside other drug-related charges. She was also charged with some kind of animal abuse and she was no longer living at that address due to an eviction. She is currently serving time in prison. Life is good. And yeah, Ripe stars, that is exactly what this animal abusing piece of work deserves. I am so glad that this person, I would not even say it's a Karen, it's just a terrible human being, got the consequences that she really deserved. The next one is a neighbor story from r/askreddit. My neighbors are not nearly as bad as some of these are, and I'm sure we will have worse experiences eventually in the coming years, but this is the first year living on our own, renting out a place. We moved in last August. Kids were outside exploring the new neighborhood. They met the neighbor kids, a brother and sister, 2 houses down, and played with them for 2 days before the boy tried setting our house on fire. The previous tenant had used the space under the double wide as a crawl space and storage area, so the back skirting was pulled open. The kids managed to get under the house and go through the stuff and apparently found lighters. I came out of the shower to smelling smoke and ran around back to see stuff on fire and was able to put it out. They also like to come onto our porch and into our yard and take literally any kind of toy that was left outside. The kicker was when their mom came over to introduce herself within the same week and I had brought up the behavior gently to her. Her demeanor changed so fast and she literally cussed out her son in front of me and told me it was not the first time that he set stuff on fire and that he practically burned an entire barn down not too long ago. 5 minutes later, after they left, her daughter comes back and says they are not allowed to play with my kids because their mom told them my kids were bad influences. My kids knew not to play with them anymore, but the following months those kids would practically instigate stuff with mine and they used horrible language, threw rocks at my van and teased our dog whenever she was outside on her lead, and there were a couple of times where I ended up getting into it with their mother for talking crap to my kids and throwing my hair up, telling her to come settle it in the street, which by the way she never did. I even got into it with her father once. He was like a live-in babysitter for chasing my kids down the road over a tiny Nerf gun that did not even belong to his grandkids. His justification was, "I did not think there were any adults home." That alone set me off. I'm honestly surprised the cops were not called on the simple fact that I had lost my temper with him and was screaming like a maniac because I was pissed over the fact this grown-ass man had chased my kid threateningly to the point that my kid came inside having a full-on panic attack thinking he was going to get taken by this guy. They moved a few months ago, thank God. She would always piss me off too, because she'd always justify her son's behavior in the neighborhood Facebook group with the fact that he is supposedly autistic, and anytime something happened with any kids, she would immediately put my kids' names out there to blame. 99% of the time my kids were not even or in outside the area of the incident. My kid has ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, and though those are entirely two different things, I don't even use that to justify his behavior if he ever acts out of line towards another person. I try to be a pretty laid-back person, I am relatively understanding, but damn dude, I could not stand those people. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Snob neighbor ripped out the property boundary fence posts to expand his land. I taught him a lesson. I have the kind of neighbor that thinks he walks on water and is better than everyone else in the neighborhood. Personally, I know that it should not bother me how other people are, but I'm not a perfect person and get very irked by that mindset. In addition to being a huge narcissist, he also ended up having the largest piece of property out of everyone else. Now, I moved in next to him, so I did not really think much of this, and I learned quickly that I wanted nothing to do with this guy. He did not say anything offensive or wrong, he was just a snob that would not stop bragging. When I first moved in, I made the mistake of trying to be a friendly neighbor to him and starting up conversations. They quickly turned into him just talking about how many amazing things he has and the new car that he got. He would talk about how important he was at his job and how he was an amazing golfer. Basically, this guy only wanted to talk to people in order to talk about himself instead of having a conversation. Talking to him was really annoying, and I'm sure everyone would excuse me for the fact that I avoided him after that. I gave up trying to be a nice and friendly neighbor. I was to my other neighbors though, who were nice people, and I could safely say good morning to. I wish the story could be about how those neighbors are awesome, but I need to shift the focus back to what evil neighbor was doing. The thing he would talk about the most was how much land he had compared to everyone else. He seemed just really proud of his land and nobody saw it as a big deal except for him. One day he decided that his amazing backyard needed something special, so he dug the entire thing up and decided to cover it. I don't know the technical term for what he did because he did not pave it like a driveway and he kind of covered it in like tiles almost. So maybe a version of paving that would make him look fancier than he actually was. My main thought during this entire thing was that if he had so much money, why was he doing this back-breaking work himself, since he was the type to consider stuff like that beneath him? I know it might sound a little messed up, but it was fun secretly watching him like the total opposite of what he tried to show off. However, back to what he was doing, I did not mind it since it was his land after all. I moved inside to do some work and my office window faces that side of the house where I share a border with the neighbor. I know that in most areas fencing is something at the discretion of the personal owners, but here it is a little different. There are post fences that are identical for everyone's property, and my guess it is to make the neighborhood look nicer. Neighbor thought that I could not see him when he started to slowly take out the posts one by one. I was intrigued and focused on what he was doing to see that with each post he took a couple of steps towards my land and hammered the posts back in. I finally realized that his land might not all be his, and this is how he was making it bigger. I ran outside to stop him before he could place anything on what was my property. Me? Stop! You cannot just move the posts to give yourself more land. There are property lines for a reason, and this is part of my backyard. Neighbor, you stay the hell out of my business. You just move in and think that you know everything and get into my business? I've been here a lot longer than you and know more. I suggest you go back in your house before I make you look even more a fool. Me? I'm telling you right now that if you don't move the posts back or if you pave my land, you are going to be the fool. I went back inside and obviously my threat fell on deaf ears. He kept the posts where he moved them and paved the area, now making his property larger. He wanted the room there to park his new car and also some type of scooter cart that he owned. He thought that he won, but actually I was just waiting for the right moment. I found out that he goes on a month-long trip every summer, and as soon as he left I called the town to let them know what was going on. They came out and saw that he had done this on all 3 sides of the property and was way over the lines that were his property. They wanted to move everything back and gave him a week to do so himself. His car and cart were on what was technically my land, and I made sure those got towed. After a week with no response, they dug up all the tiles themselves and moved the posts back where they were supposed to be. This time they used some cement to make them harder to move, and I overheard them talking about slowly doing that around the whole neighborhood to be safe. Now his yard was the normal size and his wonderful car was towed. That was not everything, since the town was not happy by the stunt he pulled and the fact that he was not able to respond. Nobody was going to call and warn this guy due to everyone hating his guts. His store gets filled with notices and he got some major fines in the mail. First, he got fined for what he did, which I consider the base, and then for all those days he did not respond to the town, he got fined as well. Then the town charged him for the workers needed to tear up his pavement and reset the posts. Finally, he had to pay for all those days his car was impounded. He came back from his vacation and was shocked at the messages on his door and the fact that his yard was now a fraction of what it used to be. He had been inching the posts a little bit over a long period of time, so it was less noticeable. At the end, he had to pay about $70,000 and I never did see that car of his again. My guess was he had to sell it to pay the town for all of that trouble. I smile whenever I see him now and he looks away and walks. Although he has no proof, he knows that I was the one that called the town, and I don't mind that he knows. I told him that if he did not stop what he was doing, I was gonna make him look like a fool. It was his fault for not believing me, and now he learned that if I say something, it will happen. Now he gets to be average like the rest of us instead of the rich snob he pretended he was. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.